When I was a sophomore in high school, I got a D plus in algebra, and I worked for that D plus, my God. And now they just give it away. And then the next semester we had geometry, and I got an A. That's how concrete I am. If I could see it, if I could see the triangle, the cylinder, or whatever, I had no problem. But I didn't understand why they were putting letters in equations in algebra. I couldn't figure it out. And then I wound up just barely short of a PhD in statistics. I was so bothered by it. I have a tendency to charge things like a machine gun nest that I have trouble with and am intimidated by. So I overcompensated in graduate school, but I worked for it. They didn't give it to me. I worked for it.
That's a spirit we need to reawaken.
Yeah, I coached basketball for both of my boys till they were in the 7th grade. So 7 years with each of my boys who were 7 years apart. And, at the Y, you go into these age brackets where it's 12 and under. So you go in 10, 11, and 12. And when we were 10, we were like 0 and 14. We didn't win any games because we were the youngest in the bracket. We didn't have a pizza party and trophies at the end of the season. I said, hey, we got our ass handed to us. We didn't win any games. We're not going to celebrate. But then the next year, we were like 6 and 4 or something. And the next year, we dominated, and they appreciated it by the time we got to that point where we were actually winning games. All this stuff about the trophy generation, I don't get it.
Yeah, these are the lessons of sports and why I encourage my kids to do sports. And it has a value to building character and understanding of what integrity really is. And we can't lose that. And the DEI type stuff is eroding every aspect. And we see this with, as they then become, some of them become professional ball players, that you have this dichotomy of folks in professional ball that are folks of integrity and others that are simply materialistic and seem to echo the Obama-esque, if you will, identity politic.
Yeah, there's not any DEI in the NFL or the NBA or any of that. I was just down this weekend with Steve Harvey at a ranch south of Atlanta. We had 250 fatherless boys down there for Father's Day. They were in there for a camp, and Cam Newton, the quarterback, came by. He is a big guy, by the way. He's like 6'6", 6'7", weighs about 240, 250. He'd be like tackling a telephone pole. He and I were talking to the boys, and they were all telling about how they wanted to be in pro sports. And it was so good for him to tell them, he said, yeah, let me tell you, you can jump high and run fast, but if you don't make your grades to be eligible, nobody will ever see it. They were saying, well, I make C's. He said, yeah, you'll never get into college that anybody will ever see you. So they can tell you what you want to hear now, but when you get up into those pro sports, you're going to have to earn your right to get on that field. It was so good to hear somebody tell them, you got to earn it. And anybody going to hand it to you? It was so good to hear him saying all that.
100%, 100%. And, I look back and when I served in the Navy for 11 years, my last tour rather, was as a physician to Congress. And within a month, July 24th, 1998, Russell Weston Jr. shot his way into the Capitol, killed 3 police officers 20 yards from our clinic. I ran down with 4 corpsmen. We tried to resuscitate the police officers. We got him out. They ultimately did not survive. It was the time that he shot his way into Tom DeLay's office also. And, my wife and I had been married just a few months. We got married on Valentine's Day in 98. And, from that point on, I knew that this country is just amazing, is that ultimately whatever we choose to put ourselves in, we have to give back. Our legacy has to be about, regardless of what we're in, whether it's sports, military, healthcare, media, we have to think about what is the country we're leaving behind. Is it better than the one we found when our parents, gave us birth? And ultimately, this is why I'm running. I want, and my family wants to leave in America, in Arizona, a district that's better than how we found it. And that's not what we're seeing right now in every institution. And I think I'm able more than any other primary candidates to give to my community, as I have been as a primary care doc and against so many of our enemies, and also during the pandemic. I can do things that none of the other candidates can do. And this is my first time running for office. The other candidates have run. Kelly Cooper lost by over 12 points to Greg Stanton. We can win this district. And, folks out there, go to our website at z4az.com, Z for AZ, and tell your family and others about our campaign, because I can hit the ground running and counter the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars overnight. And that's why we've been able to build the coalitions from the Charlie Kirks to the Governor Brewer, Senator Kyle, Hugh Hewitt, and others. So it's an amazing time to be an American.
Well, we're showing a highlight reel right now of a lot of your activities, and you need a few more diplomas on your wall. Only got about 100 there. You need to spend more time in school. But let me give you the last minute here to tell voters in your district, A, why they should vote for you, not somebody else, and B, why they should not stay home and not vote at all.
Well, my family and I, if there's ever a time in which our country can correct its direction, can right the ship's direction, it's now. And it's through voting for the right candidates that have the integrity, that have the history, that have been battle vetted and battle tested. I believe in an America of hope and an America of the American dream, not only of owning a home and a business, but of raising a family that can embody and epitomize the values that are Americanism. And we need elected officials that can do that. And the lifetime politicians like Greg Stanton should be retired, and he needs to be retired and has lost touch with America. And I can tell you, as an activist, our members of Congress should not forget what it is to be an activist, the issues that matter, to prevent the weaponization of Congress and the government. And ultimately, as we see, President Trump now is able to put those policies into place, but he needs a larger majority. And I'm in a swing district. And if I win my primary, I can then be the candidate that can defeat Stanton. So go to z4az.com. Help me win my primary so I can defeat Stanton and widen that margin, so that we're not living on a razor thin edge of one or two members, but rather 20, 30 members of a Republican majority, so that we can enact Trump's agenda, conservative agenda, as I've been proven to be a conservative since I was writing my column in high school called On the Right Track. So Congress is not a place for on-the-job training for people that just recently decided. My main opponent just decided to be a Republican a year before he ran in 22. So that's not the place for OJT, on-the-job training. So I can bring change. Go to Z4AZ, support us, call your friends to volunteer for our campaign here in Tempe, Mesa, and across the county. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Well, let me say this. I've had Dr. Jasser on the show, as I said before, when we were talking about campus chaos and all this anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian nonsense going on campus. And when we do a show, we decide what we're going to do it on. We outline what we're going to talk about, and then we look for the top experts that we think have the most relevant information about what we talk about, and then we do extensive pre-interviews with them. If they've written books, we read them. I read them. We go into a deep dive before we put somebody on the show. We don't just book whoever's handy. I mean, I've been on the air for over 2 decades, so I have the ability to really pick and choose who I want to have on the platform. I'm very blessed in that regard. I have what I call a brain room. It's a group of researchers, former college professors that have hired away from top universities. And if we have a guest that we're looking at, like Dr. Jasser, we fact check everything that they say, everything that they've written about a particular subject. And we did that with Dr. Jasser, just like we do with all of our other guests. I invite you to do this. You've heard everything we've talked about today, and you've heard Dr. Jasser make some statements. You've heard him refer to things in his book. You've heard him talk about things about the border, about the government, about education, etc. I invite you to fact check everything that he has said here today. I invite you to fact check both of us, but primarily him. You know me. Fact check him. I defy you to find something that he's just throwing around, you're going to find that's not what he does. He knows what he says, and he says what he knows. He stays in his lane, and he talks about the things that matter to the people who care. And I think when you do that, you're going to find out that this is a guy that does his homework and speaks the truth. His book is The Battle for the Soul of Islam. He talks about a lot of facts in there. It's an American Muslim's patriot's fight to save his faith. I think when you get in there, you could do the same thing. Fact check everything that he's saying. You're going to find out somebody that speaks the truth. Then you can decide if it's the truth that you want to support. And I got a sneaking suspicion it is.